So what do these numbers mean for the roadmap out of lockdown? Well, joining me now is Dr. Duncan Robertson, Policy and Strategy Analytics Academic at Loughborough University School of Business. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us as ever. Now, I know you've sent us through a group of slides which you can talk us through to give us a sense of where we're at. The first one being a heat map. Tell us what we can see.
So what has happened is obviously we've opened up, and as a result we're potentially going to get more cases, and I think this was expected. So if you look at the heat map, you can see that cases, this is really since about December, and you can see this really high level of cases before the lockdown. You know, it was a pretty severe lockdown. But it was a pretty severe peak, and we come down, and now we're starting to open schools. Kind of as we expect, we're getting more cases from school children, and if you see the 10 to 19-year-old age group is starting to increase. But you could say, well, OK, that's down to, just more tests. And to a certain extent, that could be the case. But I think looking at the ONS figures that have come out today as well, there is, this seems to be a real increase. And the other thing is 5 to 9-year-olds. These are children at school that don't really have lateral flow tests. So it seems as though they're increasing as well. What's good with hospital admissions is we're seeing those numbers are coming down. And this is, really good. But we'd also expect that because, we're still, still in a fairly severe lockdown. Children have gone back. And if there are increases in children, they don't really end up in hospital. So we wouldn't expect those to be going up yet. So this is good, and this is why hospitals are now able to open up a bit more and to take more cases in. So from the hospital admissions side, it's good, but we'd also expect that. I think
Sorry, as you say, that's down, as you say, largely to the fact that we are still in a fairly severe lockdown despite schools being back, but also presumably to do with the fact that the vaccination programme has been going at such a great pace.
Well, that's right. And we're still, I think we've got some evidence that, there are less severe cases going through from vaccination. But I think, and this has been one of the real success stories of the UK's response. So if you look at the actual people who've had vaccination, so this is another heat map, starting from when vaccination started in December. And you can see the number of people getting their first dose of the vaccination is really quite great for, over 80s, 75 to 80s, sort of 94% of the eligible people have had their first dose of the vaccine. And that's a really fantastic achievement. And as you can see, as time goes on, we're getting more and more people in the younger age groups having their vaccinations as well. And it's not just the over 50s, of course. There are, clinically vulnerable people in the under 50s group that have also been vaccinated. And that's good. So you can see right at the bottom the number of people getting their first dose and their second dose. So the one thing to say, though, of course, is 94% is not 100%. And that means there are still hundreds of thousands of potentially vulnerable older people that are susceptible to the virus.
Although
so this is where
protected by herd immunity, those people at that sort of level.
Potentially, it depends who they're mixing with. And at the moment, older people are probably not mixing very much at all. But of course, when Easter comes, the temptation is to go and see grandparents, etc. So then you do get the potential for more networks of transmission to take place. But we haven't really got that population level of vaccinations high enough to have herd immunity at the moment. So there's still the risk of people in that age group, the more susceptible, getting the virus.
Well, last but not least, let's take a look at your slide for variants, because as we know, over in France, they've got something like 10% of their cases having the South African variant, 3,000 cases a day. And that has the potential, doesn't it, to derail our vaccination programme here if it gets to the same sort of levels. Well, how are we doing?
Well, this is showing the variants apart from our homegrown variant, the Kent variant, and we're seeing the top purple line is the South African variant, and I should point out these are cumulative, so they will always stay the same or go up. So it's worth pointing that out. But we've seen a sort of slight increase in the South African variants. But I think also, if you look at that red line at the bottom, that's the P1 or Manaus variant. And if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we had 6 people who had that, who'd been detected with that, and we had, a fairly massive manhunt to get that 6th person. We now have 27 people who've been detected as having a case, and that's doubled since last week. So this is really, I think, the 4th test of the roadmap out of lockdown, is to make sure that variants are under control as well. And I think this is, why we need an extra week of data to see what's happening with those variants and whether they do pose a risk to the lockdown.
Indeed. OK, really interesting to get your thoughts. Duncan Robertson, Policy and Strategy Analytics at Loughborough University. Thanks so much.